Hey everybody, welcome to this extended discussion with Jesse Diggs. For those of you who have already watched the Sojourners and Exiles documentary, you have, to an extent, gotten familiar with this conflict as unfolding in central Nigeria. You've met some of these disciples that are responding to intense persecution and suffering and martyrdom with faithfulness, with endurance, and with this persevering hope in the gospel that we explored in the film. And so this is kind of an opportunity to, one, get a broader context of this conflict because it is ongoing. You can find it in the news. Even up to last week, I was seeing more reports of continued killings and attacks that are happening in this region. And really to present this unique opportunity that we have as disciples, wherever you're watching this from. I'm going to presume most of you guys are Westerners, maybe Americans watching this. We really do have an opportunity to give on the ground floor of helping bring relief and give tangible resources. And, you'll hear more from Jesse about that and what we can do. But I want you to meet Jesse. Jesse is an incredible witness to the gospel. He and his family have been in Africa training up African missionaries for a couple decades now. And we just had an incredible honor to meet with him and for him to invite us over to Nigeria to come and meet with these disciples. And he helped guide us through that region. And so he's really a dear brother. And I'm really excited for you guys to kind of hear more of his story, hear more about what he's doing with Sin 56. And again, how they are on the ground in the middle of this conflict, rebuilding homes and rebuilding these villages. All right, well, welcome everybody to this interview with Jesse Diggs from Sin 56 in Jos, Nigeria. Jesse, why don't you give us a little bit of background to who you are and what you've been doing in Nigeria and really in Africa for a long period of time.
Sure, I'm Jesse Diggs. I lead the ministry Sin 56. And we've been working in Africa for about 17 years, spent 14 years in East Africa, now living in West Africa in Jos, where you came and did some of the filming. We lead a ministry called Sin 56, and basically our heart is to mobilize and work with African missionaries to send them to reach the unreached. So we kind of the way we describe to people is that we serve the African missions movement. There's a massive movement of people in Africa who are ready to reach the unreached. And so we serve that movement by doing training, equipping, and mobilization, and then connecting people from the West or the global North to support missionaries in the global South, like African missionaries, to send them out. And so, yeah, that's what we do. The missions challenge in Africa is still huge. There's about 577 people groups with less than 1% Christian. Okay. And so, what we see that's greatly needed here is, number one, mission structures to mobilize and to equip and to train and send them. So mission structures like centers where we can train and then mobilize people out. It's kind of interesting because recently I was reading some of Ralph Winter. He's the late Ralph Winter, a missiologist. He was saying in the 90s, in the global South, we need mission structures for mobilizing missionaries from the global South, because we're being joined by so many laborers from the global South. And so that's been what we've been building for the last number of years. So the first thing is those structures for accountability, for sending, for a lot of reasons. And so we have bases in East Africa, and now we have a base in West Africa, here in Nigeria. And the second thing is people need, the missionaries here need training and equipping in missiology, theology, and Islamics, especially Islamics. In the 14th century, Raymond Lull was telling the body of Christ, like, we need to train people to reach Muslims in their language and their theology. And then Zwemer, Samuel Zwemer was doing the same thing in the 20th century. He was called the apostle to Muslims. But both of them really focused on, we have to train people. And I think it's probably the most important thing. And it's probably the thing that's missing the most in most missions organizations is in-depth training in Islamics, how to answer Islam, how to reach Muslims, how to share the gospel, how to plant churches in Muslim areas. It is a huge topic and something really, really greatly needed. So that's a massive part of what we do. It's a 2-year full-time mission school that we have running in each of our locations for African missionaries, cross-cultural missionaries. And then the third thing is just that we need to create bridges for people to actually be able to support these missionaries. And that's what Sin 56 does. We create that bridge of support for people from the global north to support and sponsor these guys who are trained, and then be able to mobilize them to work among the unreached people groups of Africa. And so if you look at those 577 people groups that are 1% or less Christian, almost 100% of them, it'd be like 97 or 98%, I don't know the actual math, but almost all of them are Islamic. All of those tribes are Islamic. And so really the challenge of the unreached people groups of Africa is the Islamic challenge. So that's what 756 does.
Yeah. Well, that was a great summary. And I'll just share, like, you know, we came over to Nigeria to meet you guys and really like get a firsthand look at the conflict that was happening and a lot of the testimonies that you saw in the film. But I think for our team, you know, we really walked away blown away by you know, the bigger picture of what Sin 56 was doing. And we got to meet, you know, the students that were in your school. And man, it's like, you know, very high level, you know, both in character, but also in like academic rigor of working through a lot of these. How do we share the gospel with Muslims, and how do we communicate these things? So yeah, for anyone watching, you know, please go check out Sin 56 just in general. Obviously, we're talking about you know, the conflict here, but what they're doing goes just kind of like way beyond, across the whole continent of Africa. And it's like you said, like the focus on training indigenous missionaries, Africans to reach Africans, is not only, you know, beautiful, it's also effective, and you guys are doing it at such a high level. So that's really cool. And you know, you've been in Nigeria now for several years. Were you familiar? Yeah. Okay. Were you familiar with the conflict that was going on when you moved in here? And then also, how did you kind of experience the Christmas Eve attacks that you know, we featured in the film?
Yeah. So we were somewhat familiar with sort of clashes and conflicts between Christians and Muslims that have happened in Jaws. We had heard of a number of times and incidences of persecution, and, you know, I've heard that Nigeria has been like one of the top countries for persecution of Christians in the world for quite a while. And so we were kind of aware of that coming in, but not close to it. And of course, if you come to Jaws, it's quite safe. And there's security, and so it wasn't something we were experiencing, you know, or thinking about when we first came. So when, you know, about a year in, I think, we heard about an attack in a village about an hour away from us. It's not the same village that we're going to talk about in a minute, in Bokos area, but around 60 people were killed. And so we heard that, we were gathering with our staff, like literally daily, because we have daily prayer meetings with our staff, our students. And we were praying for the people that were, you know, victimized through violence. And it was pretty intense, you know, just to pray for them and to hear about that. But at that point, we hadn't gotten involved. So, but yeah, we had heard about conflict between Muslims and Christians in Nigeria, and we're semi-aware, and most people here are, but sometimes they happen in, you know, a faraway location or in villages where it's not affecting you. You're in the city, and so sometimes these things can be far away and not impact you very much. So, yeah, that was kind of how we came in
Yeah.
to hear. Yeah.
And then so you heard about the Christmas Eve attacks, and then maybe share a little bit about like because I remember you telling me like you guys you're not designed as a relief ministry. You guys are there to make disciples and send missionaries and um, you know support missionaries, but it kind of was like we've got to do something about this, even though it's not traditionally what we've done, but we're in a unique position to respond to what's happening. Maybe
Yeah.
share a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, another thing we heard, just go back to the last point from a lot of people, a lot of missionaries have had to move out of the rural locations, rural areas because of lack of safety. So threat of kidnapping and things like that. And we'd heard of people kidnapped, impacted by it. So those are things we're hearing about. And then that attack happened. So then last Christmas Eve, this is 2023, right? We were going to a little retreat center with our family for the Christmas holiday. And so we went with a Nigerian family. He's Nigerian. His wife is American, and they have 4 kids. We just went to hang out and spend Christmas together. He actually was very, very acquainted with conflict areas because he had to flee as a refugee. His village was violently attacked when he was young, and so he actually was, has experience and trauma related to this kind of stuff. And so here we are. It's Christmas. We're trying to enjoy a vacation with our kids and hang out as families. And then we get the news that it's Christmas Eve and there's this massive attack on 30 villages, and over 350 people have been killed, slaughtered in their houses. They have no weapons. They have no recourse. And 20,000 refugees are fleeing into the nearby town and into Jaws as well. And so the 60 attack was pretty intense, and just hearing that that's nearby. But then now this is an hour away, and 350 people are just slaughtered. And I remember just kind of sitting there thinking, there's no possibility that we can live in this town an hour away from this and not try to do something, not try to get involved and see how we can help these families. And that's kind of how it got birthed in our hearts. And then I started talking to my friend who, had been in conflict. He knew about these regions. His father was a pastor, who had been persecuted. And he was versed in these regions and in these villages. And so we just started talking like, how can we help? And he was kind of cognizant of what would need to happen. And so a week later, we took a trip together. We visited the afflicted area. We met one of the pastors from the film. And there was a committee of pastors that basically they're hosting all these refugees in church compounds in the town of Boko. So it's like a small town. And then you have these vast areas, and in these vast areas of villages that are surrounding the town. So, I mean, you could travel from one end to another, like 2 hours in dirt roads. But everything is kind of centered. All of these villages centers on this particular town, Bokos. So that's the local government area for this area. And so 30 villages are just raised. So we go there, visit them, and just start asking them, like, what's going on? How can we get involved? How can we help? And we're just trying to do research. And so I asked my team, like, maybe we'll raise $5,000. I mean, maybe we'll give $5,000 as a ministry. We'll give it to some organization, and then we'll try to raise $5,000. We'll do $10,000. And the team was like, yeah, let's do it. But when we realized, like, when we saw what was going on, it was so like, it's hard to explain, but there was no centralized planning. There was no centralized planner like going, okay, you should do this and you should do this, or here's the correct organization to help with. And most people were focused on like, bring a care package. We actually did that. The first thing we did was bring care packages. We handed out 600 care packages. We went to hospitals. We visited victims with, chopped off arms, and we brought them care packages in the hospital. But as we talked to the pastor, who was there, and he was the overseer, it was basically a committee of like 4 or 5 pastors that some of this relief was coming in, and they were hosting the refugees at church compounds, and they kind of storing things like mattresses and food in a church compound so they can then distribute it to the masses of people affected. But what he told us was our biggest need is security, and to get people back to the villages, because there's no space for them in town. People have lost they're going to lose their complete livelihood. And the town can't bear the population of people coming in. So we just decided, like, okay, let's try. And we put out a post on X. I put out a post on X, and we actually got $25,000 immediately in the first round. I was so surprised by it. But then we realized we actually need to engage this ourselves. And so that was kind of the story of how we got involved, because there was no clear, nobody was doing the development to help them get back to villages. So what we were told is there needs to be help with security and help with relocating people back to villages. And really what that means is their houses. And there was no organization really up until today. I think there was one guy who helped, do 5 houses, but there's no organization, even the government, that was helping to kind of help rebuild these village houses. So we decided to just get directly involved and put together a team and started buying materials and shipping them over. We got connected to, we asked the committee, recommend local carpenters to us. So anyway, we just got involved in that way. And that's how we got started, just kind of directly doing it. Yeah.
And
we're doing missions and training. We're not a relief organization, but it was kind of shocking that we needed to put our hands to the plow the way we did. I don't know how to explain that, except that it was just surprising. It was surprising that we weren't it wasn't an obvious thing of okay, this organization is doing building, so let's help them. It was the best thing and the safest thing and the most the best you will do is to do this yourself, basically. So that's how we got involved.
We'll put pictures up, to kind of show, and if you watched the Sojourners Exiles film, you would have seen, these villages, they were, set fire to, just totally uninhabitable. And the gravity of, here's 30 villages and 20,000, you said 20,000 refugees. And the effort to get these people back to their homes, rebuild their homes, it's a massive undertaking. And so just to commend you guys, because you've been doing it since it's happened, and you guys are still continuing to, take these things on. And you mentioned, looking for a carpenter. I would love for you to share a little bit, because, unless I'm mistaken, one of the carpenters you've used is in the film. So I kind of want to jump ahead to, I reached out to you, I can't remember exactly when, but in maybe spring of 2024, saying, you guys are really involved in this. And I would love to come and meet and share some of the testimonies from people affected. And I remember you said something like, I was like, does anyone stand out to you, of someone who was affected? Yeah. And you were like, I mean, I could give you 50 to 100 people. This is so, this is so massive in destruction, and there's so many stories. But in that, you did land on a couple people to connect with and think this is the stories we need to tell. Would you want to share a little bit about that? Because I know for people watching this, people who've watched the film, I'm sure felt a really strong connection to both Raila and her brother, as well as Pastor Gideon. And so I don't know if you have anything there you want to share, that in the midst of y'all's relief effort, you getting to meet these people and what stood out about them in their stories.
Yeah, so basically the police took us, as armed security to a bunch of the villages when we visited. And the first village we went to is called Langai. And And it was just so striking. You see all these houses, just all the houses burned. You look in a house, a motorcycle is burned in there, and people don't have a lot, right? People are not living with a lot in these areas. So they have grain stores in their houses. They're completely burned. And really it destroyed their roofs because their houses are built out of mud bricks. And those bricks kind of get harder and they don't get destroyed, but the roofs get destroyed. And the roofs are rough lumber and iron sheets. And they just melted. You know, the iron just completely got destroyed. So we're in this village in Langai, and they bring us into a church. And inside the church, half of the ceiling is burned out. The whole place is filled with black smoke. The ceiling is ripped up. And then they show us on the ground, the villagers that were there, that we met there, they show us on the ground a stain on the floor. And the stain is a pastor who was shot to death in the church. All of the other villagers escaped, but this guy, he like stayed in the church, and they told me, the pastors there told me, they were calling him Baba Dua, the father of prayer, because he went in the church and prayed and he refused to run away. And that actually attracted the terrorists to the church, and everybody else escaped in the village. No one else was killed in that village, although they like completely razed the village. So you go in there and there's a stain because they stacked plastic chairs on his body and they burned him in the church. And I was so stunned by it. And then I'm thinking, well, I thought we're going to raise 10,000. We're going to commit to 10,000 no matter what, but we get 25. Yeah. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like, you take one piece at a time. And so we're like, well, let's just try to help this one village. And so we raised enough. And so what I did was I asked the local leaders, like, get me a local carpenter to put together an estimate for the roofs of houses in the village. And they basically sent me, somebody came to my office in Jaws, and they brought me literally penciled, here's material prices for every family and what it would cost to do a roof. And it was like 25 different families or something like that. And each roof was like between $700 and $1,000. And I was like, holy cow, like, that's amazing. We can help each of these families. We could at least do one for each of these families. So that's what we did. And we committed to rebuilding the church. We took our students at the time, we did a mission trip there for 1 week. And we spent every day in the village working with the villagers, helping with the church and rebuilding their houses. And we just employed the local carpenter there. So what I found out was that the carpenter that they had given me to make the estimate was actually the pastor's son who was killed in the church. And so it was so intense, like meeting him. This guy is the one who's the carpenter, and I got to hear his story and his heart. And then we're kind of back, and I'm just in my office one day, and this lady shows up to visit me. And her name is Raila. And she goes, you guys rebuilt the church in my village, and my dad was the pastor who was killed in that village. I just came here to say thank you. And how she was like so touched, so moved that we would have done that in her village. And it was just transformative. And it was amazing to see her and to meet her. And ever since then, because she actually lives in Jaws. And so I knew her. So when you contacted me, I'm like, she has a pretty incredible story, because she actually sat with me in my office and told me the story of her father, who was the pastor, Baba Dua, who was killed in his church, and how full of faith he was in the midst of everything, and stayed there, and now has become, kind of like a hero in the faith in that region. Yeah. So it was tremendous. So that's how we met Rahila. Yeah. Yeah.
That's incredible. And just for, just to make sure the dots are connected for people who are listening. So the scene where Rahila is walking through the church, that is her brother. She's talking with the carpenter, Ima. They're talking about their father. That is in the church where this happened, where Jesse arrived to. And, I was telling you earlier, Jesse, so many people have shared about how touched they were by Rahila and her story and character. And it's just kind of like I wish you could meet her in person, because obviously, like, there's only so much you can communicate on screen, but definitely a hero of faith, and the way that she has reflected on her father and her father's life and her father's witness, both she and her brother, is so admirable and
Powerful. Yep.
so
Powerful.
encouraging.
Yeah. When we
and so
went
maybe
there,
go ahead.
when we went there and did the mission trip, this is like 3 weeks after the attack, or maybe it was a month after or so. We go and do the mission trip. I might be getting the timing wrong, but here we are, like all the houses are burned down, the church is burned, and we're there doing development, and there's a women's conference, and that they had planned the previous year to do at the same time. They didn't cancel the conference. The women are meeting there from the village, meeting under a tree. There was like 80 women. It was so stunning. I'm like, what kind of people are so full of faith that they don't cancel the women's conference? They just do it under a tree, and their whole village is not destroyed. I mean, that's the kind of faith that has really impacted us. So as we are doing this, right, as we are there doing this trip, in the middle of it, I get visited by a group of elders from another village that was attacked. That village was embalmed. Like I told you, we're committed to this one. Let us do our part and do this one. And so they sit with me, and I'm sitting with these guys, and then they start showing me photos on their phone of a pastor. Their village pastor's family was burned to death. His wife and all of his daughters. He had 5 daughters or something like that. And he's showing me the pictures of the ashes and the bones that they found in their house, and then the destroyed church and the destroyed village. And they're saying a number of people were killed in their village. And they're like, please, we've seen how you have helped in Langai. Will you come help us in Mbam? Will you help our village? And I'm like, I don't have enough money right now, but yes, I will figure out a way. We'll figure out a way. The Lord will do something. And that's how I met Gideon. So Gideon is the guy in the promo of your film. And actually, I didn't get to meet him. I met the elders of the village, and I made a commitment to them, and I visited Mbam before meeting him. And then through a connection through some other people, when you came, that's the first time we actually sat down with Gideon, who had lost his entire family in the attack. And so that's how I met Gideon. And since then, actually, we finished about 17 houses in that village. And we just rebuilt the church and the pastorium. And they just visited me recently. So thankful, so happy, and just amazing what God is doing there. And they have another pastor that's there now with that community. So very cool.
And so just again, to help kind of visual link, if you remember when Pastor Gideon is walking through his village, I mean, you guys could see how destroyed and it looks like ancient ruins, of a place. And, so that's incredible to hear that you guys have rebuilt. So you said 17 homes and the pastorium in that village.
Yep.
Yeah, that's incredible. So on that note, I got to see in Langhai where Rahila's father and Ima live. I got to see the finished rebuild in that city. So that was the first village that you guys had done. So it was like, I got to see the prototype of what you guys are looking to do. And of course there was 30 that were destroyed. Yeah. So a lot of work in front of you.
30 villages. One village is maybe 50 houses or 25 houses, 25 families, Tahure was the one we just did, which we can talk about. But we were there together as well. We went to Tahure and you filmed there.
Right. And that was another one that was, again, completely wiped out. All the roofs was gone. So you guys did that one as well. This was the third village then, Tahure?
Yeah. So round 3, we had this awesome brother visit, dear friend of mine, and we went there at the end of last year, and they gave a large gift so that we could keep going and keep helping. And so if we got more funds, I knew where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to Tahore because Tahore was the worst hit. So I visited there and just got, man, the stories are unbelievable. You know, one woman in a wheelchair was killed. They have a mass grave of 22 people that they buried, and they showed me the capstone, you know, where they had buried 22 people from their village. So me and you were there, and that has always been in my head because it's kind of one of the most vulnerable villages that's been attacked in the past, and it was the worst hit. And man, it was what we basically, like, me and you were climbing on top of a house with no roof.
Yeah.
And we were climbing on top of like the rough wood lumber that was there. Yeah. And I was passing you the camera, and you were just getting a scan of the whole village because the whole thing, I don't know, what were you feeling when you saw that? Like, it was so intense.
Yeah, it was intense. I'll put a picture up there of what Jesse's talking about. You know, being on the roofs. But yeah, it was really unique. You know, experiencing that, because that was one. There were villagers that were kind of walking around. They obviously they couldn't live there. And it was like, wow, what is it? What would that feel like to go back and visit your home village, not be able to stay in your home because everything is destroyed, and then on top of that, not even have any sort of hope or plan for how this could resolve. You know, like you're saying, Jesse, like no one's there to help. You know, you're on your own, and especially that village, the way it was situated, it felt isolated. You know, it felt like you know, you're on an island and your island just got destroyed, and now what? And so I can't emphasize enough, like you were saying, Jesse, you saw. I mean, you could call it an opportunity, or you could call it just a great void of no one else can do this right now. We're in a unique position to do this. And you've shown that you can do it. Like, you've shown with the resources that you have gotten. I've gotten to see the villages that are rebuilt. Just to emphasize to people.
I'll say something about that, because one of the things that just became so apparent, like, as we were doing this, is people are so worried about corruption, and almost everybody involved was just like, whoa, like, we know all of the support coming in, all of it is going directly to the people who were greatly hit, you know. But there's so much fear in people's hearts and minds that if you give through an organization, the people on the ground are going to misuse the finances. Everybody talks about it the whole time. And so when you're doing it directly, and you have a small team of people, and you're working with local people, local carpenters, and they're seeing the direct result of the money is going from there to the ground, people are really touched by it. It's hard to even like quantify that, but people have commented to me so many times just about how like shocking that is to them. Just because people in this part of the world are dealing with a ton of corruption. You know, obviously an area of the world where it seems like people are being killed, innocent people gunned down in their homes, and who's doing something about it? Why can't the government stop it? And these questions, and we won't get political on this podcast at all. But in that mix, in that tremendously difficult mix of confusion and feelings of injustice, it's like at the same time people feel like funds come in and then they go to something else, or they, people are not trusted. I would say that. I'm not saying people are not trustworthy, but people are not trusted. So they really appreciate the fact that they can see everything going directly to the ground. And it's really made an impact. It's really made it. Like, we've been, approached by governors. We've been approached by chiefs and kings. So that, like, people are just super thankful that it's going directly to it. And we're able to manage it pretty well, so. So
I'll again take this moment to repeat from from the intro here, you can find the link to give to this relief effort either on Sin 56's website or on our 4910 Films website. We have the link on our homepage. You can click and give directly to what they're doing. This reminds me, you tell thing about some people will say, well, why don't they just do this? Why don't they just do that?
Yeah.
These quick fixes. Which speaking of that, I just think it's really amazing that the Lord, moved your family to this area, and so many of these relationships, friendships, not just ministry partnerships, but friendships were in place so that when this happened, it could be so natural and it could be so trusted.
Yep.
And this is a friend that's been working with us, and he's been working with my pastor, and we sent a missionary to his school 2 years ago.
Yeah,
there's
totally.
so much connectivity that you guys have established just in being, just in being witnesses, faithful witnesses in the years prior to this. But I've had, different experiences when either I'm sharing about the film, or this one actually happened before the film came out. I was sharing about what was going on, and someone, kind of pushed back on it, because I was sharing about how this is so, representative of the cross and embracing the cross and being a witness. And someone's like, well, why don't they just stop them? Why don't they just defend themselves? Why don't they just do something different?
Yeah, great question.
How would you because I think a lot of maybe it's an American thing or a Western thing to kind of have this, we can fix it, we can just systematically root this out. What would you say to that, as to why is this still going on in 2025? This feels so dated to be having these type of conflicts, and why can't we fix this?
Yes. So this is a concerted effort of terrorism. It can come at any moment it's in a specific region, but the terrorists might come into a village unsuspecting. So it was Christmas Eve. Nobody was thinking we're going to get attacked tonight. Nobody was. And then all of a sudden it's a hugely coordinated attack, and they stormed 30 villages. That was but the first question I do ask is, why are people defending themselves? There's a lot of poverty. This is subsistence level farming and life, and people in the past have not felt like it's really, resources are hard for people they can get a hunting license and have a hunting rifle, but it costs money, and bullets cost money, and those types of things cost money. And so people generally have not made it the priority in their life to do that. And when you're subsistence level farming and living, it doesn't become like the primary thing you're thinking about and doing. And so a lot more people are thinking about that right now. I can tell you that much. It's not that these people do not want to defend themselves. They're victims of aggressive, violent terrorism from a specific fundamentalist Islamic people group that is targeting them. And it's not just, it is definitely religious, but it is also tribal and about land. And so it's an aggressive move to try to push people off of their ancestral land to take over that land and use it and occupy it. So it's a form of genocide, and that's what's happening. And so people are they're rushing to try to figure out how to do it. I won't talk about the government, but the Nigerian government is very complicated. And this region is very complicated. The governor is a Christian, and he seems like a good man, but there's no state police in this part of the world. So it's a federal police force. And so there's no kind of like direct local ability, but the federal government has sent police in some of these villages, but not all of the villages that are being attacked. And so police were sent to Tahure, they were sent to Langai. And so when we go there now, we find about 3 police officers or 5 police officers guarding these villages, whereas before there was none. And so it is very complex. I'll just say that it's very complex, and there's a lot of factors to it.
Yeah.
And it's very sad. And the injustice is painful. It is painful because it is injustice and violence. Right. And it's deeply saddening to watch it happen to innocent people, people who didn't do anything wrong. And they're mostly Christians. So there's definitely, if you think about when these attacks happened, and I know we're going to talk about a recent one, but this happened on Christmas Eve when people had traveled to their village homes, because a lot of people live in cities and they go back to the village to be with their extended relatives. And so they were vulnerable. They weren't thinking that they would be attacked on a religious holiday, Christmas holiday, and 10 churches were destroyed in that attack. Yeah. So, yeah. And so it's a continuing thing, but there is security. Security is an important thing that everybody's trying to talk about and figure out. So that's what I'll say about that without getting too deep into it.
No, I think that's great. I think that's a really good kind of give some context as to why, these things are still ongoing. And, I think you brought up a great point just to emphasize that these are innocent victims, especially
they're vulnerable innocent victims. Yeah. Vulnerable people who don't have a lot of resources, and everything they have is being destroyed. So it's so.
And again, this is something that I'm starting to see now. Like before, when we came and visited, I really hadn't seen much about the attacks. You're starting to see it more in the news, and maybe it's being politicized for people's whatever, to try and emphasize a point someone's making or not. But the bottom line is, like you said, these are innocent victims, and you guys again are uniquely positioned to help on the ground. The very people that you guys got to see and interact with watching the film are the people that Jesse and his team are working with day after day after day. So, again, just to encourage you guys to check out the Relief Fund and see how you can get involved. You mentioned more recent attacks, and again, I did as well because they're coming up in the news. Share a little bit about that. How does that relate to? Is this the same players and the same? The same similar thing to what happened on Christmas Eve? What's going on now?
Yeah, it's the same players. It's a different area. Bokos is about an hour and a half away from here. Bassa, which was just attacked on Passover week. Think about that. The same people.
Yeah. Christmas Eve and now Passover week.
Fundamentalist Islamic, fighters. Attacking on Passover week, and they raided a village called Bassa, about 40 minutes away from us, and they literally went into people's houses and killed children in their sleep. It was horrifying, and so that just happened last week, and you feel powerless. You're like, what do we do? And you're trying to help in these ways, and then you feel like we're walking backwards, because of the security situation and wanting to see these villages secured. And so we're interceding and praying and doing everything we can to advocate, to talk to the right people, to try to advocate and to, but we do want to continue being involved in the relief. And so we actually had a chance to meet with some local officials this week that are part of that area. And this one really hit home. We have a housekeeper who works for us, and we love her dearly. And she told us that this is her village, and she lost 10 family members. So it was devastating. You can see online a mass burial of 54 people, and she was at that burial. So I mean, you're talking about people we interact with every day. Being deeply impacted by this. So yeah, we want to continue engaging, and there's a way for people to help. if they give through the fund that we've set up on your website, and we have it goes through our organization, 100% of it goes toward the relief effort of these villages that were attacked. And I just want to encourage people to consider giving, because it really does make a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. And it brings hope and healing into people's lives when they see that, well, God sees them, and he hasn't forsaken them. So, yeah.
And just maybe to share, because for some people watching, they're able to give, $100 to $1,000. Some people are able to give $10,000, $20,000. What does it cost to rebuild a house? I think you mentioned that a little bit earlier, but just talk about kind of the scale of how helpful you guys can be with the right resources.
Yeah, so it costs about $1,000 for us to re-roof a house and work with the villagers. They rebuild and they do their own bricks, and then we come in and help them with the things they don't have. And there's some things we do with cement and other aspects of building just to help them. We've also been helping the security. Like I said, like there are some local police in these places in Tahore. Like I said, we were able to really help them. We kind of created a structure for them to stay in while they're there. They've been there for over a year, like just living in that village. They're not from there. These are federal guys. So that's helpful, and they've really appreciated our support of them. And so, so that's been, about $1,000 does a roof, and we work with these people, and then about 5,000 to 10,000 helps us rebuild a church. So there was about 10 churches that were destroyed. We want to rebuild them.
That's great. That's really helpful. And then I also want to maybe give you an opportunity to share some ways people can be praying. But right now, obviously, there's a massive practical need of resource. Yeah. And so for you guys that were touched by the film, touched by the stories of Raila and Ima and their father, touched by the stories of Gideon, Pastor Gideon, these are the type of people that you can help directly.
Absolutely.
And I think, as brothers and sisters, this is a massive opportunity to step in and return the favor of the witness that these people are giving of faith and faithfulness and commitment and perseverance and endurance. I totally feel that. And so just again, a final encouragement there. Go find the link. It'll be listed in the description of this video. We'll make sure you don't miss that opportunity to really share the load and share the weight of this. So Jesse, I don't know if you have any other things that people can be praying for, or other ways to get involved and connected to what you guys are doing.
Sure. Obviously, let's pray what Paul says in Timothy, to Timothy, for those in authority, for the leaders of these areas. It's easy to criticize, but we need to pray for them. I just talked to the local leader of the area that was just attacked. He lost 6 family members, and he was really broken, and feels the need, all the things that people feel like we need security, we need justice. And so it's intense. And so let's pray for the governor of this region. It's Jaws, Nigeria Plateau State. We pray for the governor, pray for the police, pray for people involved, that God would bring peace and stability to this region for the sake of his people.
Amen.
And so, so I would say that's how you can pray.
Yeah.
I have a few thoughts. I want to share a few thoughts, before we end. Do. One is just to say that our hearts are so much for the gospel as well in this whole thing. Mm-hmm. So we helped in Tahore, and then that's the third village. We actually did 25 houses there, and we're still working there. We want to do the church there. But we brought we did a mission there with our mission students, and we were actually able to visit the neighboring communities, which are Fulani communities, Islamic communities, and we brought them relief. We fed them and came and said, we love you guys and we want to share the gospel. And a whole community opened up to us, this Muslim community of Fulani, for our team to go in and share the gospel. And we gave out gospel literature. So God is opening doors to serve our so-called enemies, and be messengers of peace as well. Because I'm sure that not everyone in these communities, that likes what's going on. They're also impacted, and so we want to pray for these Fulanis to know Jesus, and we are committed to that. We are committed to seeing that. So that's in our heart. And as we talk about all this relief and serving this Christian community, we got to pray for these Muslim communities in northern Nigeria, that God would break in. There are even some Muslim villages that are being attacked by the same people. So just it's more complex than we think. And then I just want to say that I was so blessed by the film Sojourners and Exiles, and I want to thank you, man, because everybody should watch it. I was impacted because of the proclamation of the gospel. When I watched it, I was so impacted by the gospel, particularly like when Raila and her brother are sharing, and that whole sequence. And then hearing, the commentators and the guys who are sharing in the whole film, it's about the gospel, the kingdom, and the hope of our salvation, and our resurrection, and our being united with Israel and all that. So it was such an awesome, powerful, clear proclamation of the gospel. So I felt like completely proud to be a part of that film. And I just wanted to say thank you to you, because I thought you did an awesome job.
Oh,
so everybody should watch it.
Well, thank you. But the thanks is really to, of course, everyone that was sharing, including yourself and, Gideon and Raila and Ema. I'm so grateful that you.
But the other thing is
family,
just the miracle of, as we're doing this, a friend connects us, and you short notice come out to Nigeria, and it all kind of. So one thing that this film really does that is so powerful is just brings awareness. There are certain genocidal events going on in the world, and people hear about them, and in other places that they're happening, people don't hear about them. And so it is actually, to have you telling the story through this film is, I think, deeply edifying to the people here who the story is going out, and it's so meaningful. It's so meaningful. So thank you for doing that and taking your energy and your effort and, by the grace of God doing this, because it was so valuable. Yeah.
Amen. Well, praise God. And so thankful to you and your family opening the door to your whole community, and all of your help in kind of amplifying this story and these stories within it. So grateful for that. Is there a way, on top of giving, giving through the relief fund, how can people stay up to date on what Sin 56 is doing? Is that through social channels, your website? Is there an email list or something like that? Maybe if you send me something I can link in the video so that people can kind of keep tracking with what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah. Send56.org. If you want to support an African missionary, we're trying to send 25 missionaries this year. And so you can go on our website, send56.org, and it will basically tell you how you can sponsor a missionary. And we get a full sponsorship, we can send out a missionary. And so we love your help. We'd love your help sending more laborers to the harvest, to the unreached. Yep.
Amen.
And then
we
have some socials too.
Okay, great. I'll link that in the description and whatnot. But I pray that that the Lord would bring resources, and for whoever is watching, that He would put it on your heart to give, to express generosity in this way. And I pray that the word of the Lord would continue to run swiftly through you guys and what you're doing.
Amen.
So Jesse, thank you again for everything. Thank you for coming on here and helping us see the bigger picture of what's going on, and giving us an outlet to be generous to this situation. That's something to really be grateful for, I think, for us Americans to actually have an opportunity to give and to serve what's going on with you guys. So thank you so much,
Thank
man.
you, Reed. It was awesome to be here. Awesome to do this with you.